Alright, this video I want to speak about real Kung Fu sparring. Now this is something that has been created, something that I created, something that I aim for, something that hasn't really existed before. Recently I've been using AI for a lot of help into learning more about the tradition of Kung Fu and trying to live by the tradition, operate the school by the tradition, and it's been very helpful. But one thing that AI is not helpful with is developing like the ultimate way to understand the science of combat in relation to real unarmed combat and preparation for that. So AI would talk about how basically categorizing Kung Fu is just technical sparring and like not competitive at all, and I don't agree to that. So I feel that this is an example of a time when merging the traditional with the modern is important, hence the modern Kung Fu. I feel that the competitive component is extremely important. It's not just the technical. So in my eyes, like advanced sparring, high level sparring, hard contact, whatever you want to call it, is important for people that are passionate about real training, about real self-defense, real martial arts, and representing like an elite level of development. I feel that real Kung Fu sparring is going to be an elite level beyond combat sport, because you create the rules. You don't allow the sport to create it for you, and the sport is designed for entertainment and to have like a fair match in which to entertain people and to profit. But real Kung Fu sparring is not about entertainment at all. It's not about profit either. You're not making money off of it. You're just simply doing it out of passion, and also to find truth, to discover truth into what it actually takes to be elite in your ability to defend yourself. To me, competitive Kung Fu sparring at a high level should be similar to playing one-on-one basketball with somebody that is also very talented and skilled, and then you guys put maximum effort and to see who wins and who performs better. And if everything goes correctly, then nobody's supposed to be seriously injured. Nobody's supposed to be in the hospital. There might be some fouls, there might be some hard contact, there might be, some type of aggression, there might be, just a lot of effort. But you're just trying to discover who is the best in that moment. And it's supposed to be competitive. It's supposed to be challenging, and to me, sparring is like that. Like advanced sparring in Kung Fu is supposed to be like that, where you're there to challenge each other, to see head on who is better at what. Or likened to playing chess. You play chess and you strategize and you go against somebody who's good, and you just beat them. And if you dominate them, then you dominate them. Even with the one-on-one basketball, if you're going up to 11, you win 11-0, then that's what you do. The chess game, you beat them as quick as possible, then that's what you do. And you're relentless. You keep doing it, and you don't have mercy. You just keep winning. And in that process, the person that you're going against, they're supposed to figure it out and improve and then become a better challenge. And that's how it's supposed to be. Or playing billiards and you just win the game. You know, your objective is to win the game and maybe as quickly as possible, or you run the table and you never let them get a shot, and you aim to win. And then in that process, when they keep playing with you, they're supposed to figure it out and aim towards improvement where they could get to your level. Or even bowling, you know, same thing. You know, you aim to get a perfect score of 300, and you try to get the closest to that as possible every single game. So to me, competitive kung fu sparring, it's about two individuals participating where they're relatively a challenge for each other, you know, in terms of skill, in terms of or size, or you know, weight, like height. So you know, somebody who age, you know, somebody who is older, maybe 50, 60 years old, and they've been training for a long time, you know, if they try to spar with people who are not or around their age group, a lot of times they wouldn't even find a challenge because the people around their age group might have already been passed away, or they just never, they don't ever train, and they don't really, they're not into the same thing. So the person is just going to be, there's not going to be a challenge for him. So then he would have to seek challenges from people who are not, or who are younger, you know, who, you know, are athletic, you know, who have been training a little bit. So then they would have to seek challenges outside of their age group, you know, or a woman that's very advanced in her training might need to seek challenges from a man, you know, that could give her that challenge. Or a teenager, you know, who is 13, 14, could be trained for like almost 10 years, and anybody in his age group he would dominate. So he would need to seek challenges from people that are older than him that also have been training, so then he could elevate his practice to another level. So you're seeking challenges in depending on where you're at. So meaning, you know, there are no rules to that. So you're not like restricted to only sparring against your own gender, or only sparring against people of your weight class, or of your age, or of your skill level. You know, because sometimes people might not be as skilled because they haven't trained as much, but their size, you know, their weight, their height, their age presents a huge challenge. And that can be a way of finding that challenge to help elevate you to continue to keep growing. So, you know, you could have somebody who's been training for a long time, 20 years or so, and he's 40 years old, but then he finds somebody who's 25 years old who hasn't trained that much, like in the martial art, but then physically he is trained, he is fit, he's strong, he's tall, he's fast, he weighs 50 more pounds, he's you know, at least 6 inches taller. And then this 40-year-old who has been training for 20 years could find a challenge in that person because of the different natural advantages this person has, you know, just from the beginning. So it's basically about finding the challenges that are presented in your life, and then seeking to perfect the art, you know. And to me, there's a difference between competitive sparring and then technical sparring. To me, technical sparring would be more like very controlled with the force. So it's like somebody who is dominant and known to be dominant. So it could be a father going against his younger son who is still not there yet, but the father holds back his power dramatically. But he doesn't hold back his speed, but he holds back his power to teach the son to learn more of the technical aspects of sparring. And it could be like light contact, touch, like light contact sparring, where you hold back the power, and the objective is to teach the son to be able to block and counter and evade and get hit as least as possible, and then finding opportunities to hit back. So you're basically controlling the force, so then there's not going to be any serious injuries. But after the technical sparring, or it could even be a man who's very strong going against a woman who is like half his size, not nearly as strong, and the man could, outperform the woman very easily and hurt her easily, but he would hold back his force in which to not injure her severely, but to get her to work on the technical aspects of the training and to strike harder with force for the female, in which to try to hit the person who is stronger and find the openings. But yet, if the person who is stronger does get hit, it's not a threat, it's not a risk, because he is so much more powerful, so it gives a realistic feeling for the woman to know what it's like to be able to see how much force that they could generate in an encounter, and to give them a realistic feeling of how it's like to actually fight back and not have to hold everything back all the time. And then the person that they're sparring with is trained and capable of blocking, evading, and even taking some of the damage that the woman is trying to defend herself with. So those I would consider more of technical sparring. But competitive sparring is when it's like both people engaged are not really holding back as much. They are basically aiming to win the confrontation, or win the match, by essentially getting the person to give up the match and be like, what, let's stop. But it's not necessarily about winning or losing, but it's about expressing your strength, your power, combined with the skill and technique and speed, and to essentially highlight the mastery of the technique, and starting from the outside, merging in. And if you perfect the outside, then the confrontation should end much more quickly from techniques that are essentially not as lethal, but can still stop the fight because of the damage that is sustained from the various parts of the body that are vulnerable at that range. So meaning there's no need to say, hey, no elbows to the face, because a true master from the long range should be able to end the confrontation, no matter it be with the kick or kicks, or with the jabs, the crosses, before it even closes the gap. So the whole idea is to master the techniques from the outside moving in, and as you master those techniques from the outside moving in, then those elbows, those knee strikes, those those throws, those takedowns, those joint locks, those those foul techniques, small joint manipulations, the biting, the scratching, all those things, the hair pulling, none of that really comes into play, because once you master from the outside working in, if you beat them from the longest range, all that other short range things needed for survival no longer, like, it no longer plays a factor. So meaning, like, it's like somebody that has a gun and they always keep range. They always got their ammunition. Their aim is on point. They're very precise. They should win every single confrontation with that gun against somebody who just doesn't have a gun, or somebody who has another weapon but it's not a gun. They got a bow staff, they got a nunchuck, they got brass knuckles, they got a bat. It doesn't matter what they have. If you are perfect with your gun, you should be able to beat them every single time. Because you perfected that range that's the longest. So they could have a hammer, but it doesn't matter. They could be the greatest ground fighter, but it doesn't matter, because you've perfected that range that is the longest. And that to me is the science of like the ultimate reality of like unarmed combat. So meaning the longest range, it will be the kicks, and the kicks are one of the hardest things to develop. But if you can master that range, you can end the confrontation with the kick, then that's where the attention lies and what to focus on. Now, usually the kicks will proceed on to the next techniques, which will be the jabs and crosses, which is the next longest weapon. So then perfecting the jabs and crosses to end the confrontation before it goes further into potentially the hook strikes, the uppercuts, the inside fighting, the elbows, the knees, the takedowns, the ground fighting, so on and so forth. Now everybody has their range of what they prefer, or the ones that they're gifted in, or the ones that they have strengths in, and then they have the range of which which is their weakness. But the science here is to develop all the ranges, to be proficient in all of them, but still understand that it starts from the outside working in. So as we spar in an advanced state, your goal is to continually attempt to master the range from the outside and try to win the confrontation from the outside. Now, it doesn't mean that if it goes to the inside that you're automatically going to just abort the situation. You train in that as well. You're prepared for that as well. Somebody takes you down to the ground, you need to know what to do, and you need to survive that situation. But the fact that somebody has been able to take you down to the ground, it already identifies that you haven't mastered the outside range. Because if you master the outside range, that takedown should have never occurred to begin with. So meaning somebody who's perfect with his kicks should not catch an elbow. Somebody who's perfect with his kicks should not be catching a knee. Somebody who's perfect with his kicks should not be taken down to the ground. And if you take it to the next range after the kicks, somebody's perfect with their jabs and crosses, same thing. They should not be catching a hook or an uppercut or a takedown and have to deal with the ground fighting. It's the people that are not good at the outside range that end up getting taken down or forced into the close range, close quarter combat, where it becomes a lot more dangerous and a lot more lethal, and it becomes a lot more unsafe for sparring. So yeah, you don't want to be throwing elbows during sparring. You don't want to even make a close fist to the face, but you do need contact to the head, to the face. And the way that we do that is we open our hands, and we do palm strikes, we do backhand strikes. Now, that can easily turn into a fist in a real fight, but the fist only comes in to the face in a real fight when your life is at risk, or when you're in a confrontation in the streets. But other than that, mostly everything is allowed, because if you master the art of not getting hit in the face from the jab and cross distances, then it's going to be very difficult for them to elbow you in the face if they can't even get close enough to you, because you are so fast with your hands that you're hitting them, before they can even get that close to you. Merging in the ground fighting with advanced kung fu sparring, it's not an easy thing to do, because it can quickly get out of control, and it can quickly become dangerous. But the person that's trained well will know how to respond in a way where they will not severely hurt the person who has taken them to the ground, but they will know how to activate certain pressure points, get them in certain holds, certain chokes, certain locks, in which to neutralize the opponent, so then the opponent can no longer hurt them. So the Kung Fu artist is prepared to go to the ground if need be, but he understands that the real fight happens from the long range, not the short range. So meaning, like, a police officer has many tools to work with. He has his gun, he has his taser, he has his baton, he's got his mace, he's got his hands, he's got his legs. Police officer has many options. But the number one option that should control every single situation, it is that firearm. It is not his bare hands, is not his legs, is not the mace, is not the baton, is not the taser. It is that firearm. So if he uses that firearm properly, he should be able to control every situation that he needs to be able to control. But once you throw that firearm out the picture, then now he has to go resort to the next option that could control a situation from a distance. So that might be the taser, that might be the mace, that might be the baton. So you got to utilize your weapons from the longest range first. And somebody who truly studies Kung Fu and the science of combat in the right way understands that. That's why Bruce Lee, before he passed away, he was really studying a lot on fencing, because he understood that the longest weapon, the perfection of the longest weapon, that is where the truth is. And the longest weapon within your body, it is the legs. And then right after the legs, it is those jabs and crosses. So if you could perfect that, all that other stuff that goes from the inside, that is not the priority. But just because it not the priority doesn't give you the right to not be capable in it. But it's just this understanding that in order to perfect anything, you got to put your attention on what is the most important. It's not even about doing everything of equally. It's about being complete in your development, but then understanding which phase of the combative situation is the absolute most important. And that phase is the long range phase. And when you spar focused on the long range phase, even if you do hard contact, even if you are very much expressing your full potential, it keeps the sparring a lot safer than when people get too close and too close into the close quarter. Then yes, a lot of dangerous things could happen when you're not wearing equipment. You know, those hooks, those devastating hook punches, those devastating uppercuts, those devastating elbows, and those knee strikes, those eye jabs, those chokes, those arm breaks, those arm locks, those small joint manipulation, the eye gouges, all those things are extremely lethal and potentially extremely unsafe for sparring. And somebody who is at a high level and they know how to control these techniques, they know that once that the range bridges that gap, they in the moment know how to control those techniques, so then their sparring partner is not severely injured. But that is not something that a lot of people know how to do, and that is why this way of sparring is something that is very difficult to teach, very difficult to implement in a mass scale, because it's not no clear-cut defined rules to say, hey, everybody needs to abide by this, and you can't do this, but you could do that, and all these other things. It's not necessarily about winning or losing. It's about learning, and it's about effort. It's about putting effort. It's about being challenged to grow. If you're not being challenged to grow, then you're not going to grow. So that is part of the problem of the traditional Kung Fu, when they're trying to say that Kung Fu is just about technical sparring. There's no competitive sparring, and I think that is BS. That's why what I'm speaking about right now and what I'm developing, it's not just abiding by just the traditional. It is also adding the modern part, where when you see, for example, two boxers that are at a high level competing, that's a science of boxing. It's not just touching each other and just point sparring. It's like you are in this match and you can knock them out, or you can win by points, or whatever the case may be, but you need to do what you need to do. That competitiveness brings out the reality of what the science really is in the art of boxing, or in the sport of boxing. But in real fighting, when there are no gloves and there are no rules, and you can use your entire body to defend yourself and not just your hands, it's not the same thing as boxing. Now this is a totally different realm, and it's even very different than what you see in the cage. This is something that is not mass produced. This is not the MMA. This is not the kickboxing. This is not the Muay Thai. This is not the boxing. This is not the wrestling. It's not the football. It's not the basketball. This is the study of the true science of real combat, and to understand like what the whole body is truly capable of, and what the true science is, and which techniques are truly the most effective in perfecting the art of unarmed combat. You know, um, it's beyond the checkers. To me, you know, the MMA, the boxing, it is like the checkers. Real combat with no rules, it is like the chess. It's a totally different game. And it requires an immense amount of awareness and precision. And like I said, it's might be similar to the tactical training with the people that focus on the firearms. Because once the people go into the realm of firearms and they choose and decide to carry a firearm with them everywhere they go, and they even sleep with it on. They go to the bathroom, it's on. They go to work, it's on. They go anywhere they go, they got that gun with them and it's fully loaded. That is a whole different level of preparation for scenarios. And that gun comes first before any other weapon, before any of the punching and kicking. That gun comes first. And once that gun comes first, it completely changed the dynamics of survival. So their mind, their preparation is focused on that. So that is not combat sport. That is not entertainment. That is a whole different level of precision into making sure that you do everything that you need to do the right way. No matter it be like not leaving your gun somewhere and then somebody else gets a hold of it, or accidental discharges, and all sorts of things that could happen with a firearm, suicides, all these things. So what I'm saying is that you take the gun away, what's the next weapon? Then it might be the katana, it might be the bow staff. That weapon, if that's your weapon that you're going to carry with you everywhere, that becomes your primary focus of like perfecting that range. Because if you perfect that range, if you had a katana with you everywhere, there isn't any amount of unarmed combat that the person could ever beat you with. When they don't have a weapon, but you have a weapon, you should be able to win every single encounter because of that weapon, because you've perfected it. So once again, you take away all the weapons and there's just no weapons, it's just your body. It is not the elbow strike that is the absolute most important. It is not the knee strike. It is not the choke. It is not, the arm break. It's not throwing the person down to the ground. It starts from your legs. And then it starts to proceed on to the techniques, once again, to the jab cross range. And then it starts getting closer and closer and closer. And once it starts getting closer, now you've made more and more mistakes through the process to allow the situation to get closer. And that process of allowing it to get closer, that is exactly what you need to perfect in order to truly be the most proficient in unarmed combat. And that's what our sparring, our advanced sparring, that's what it focuses on. It's focusing on perfecting that range from the outside in. And you do it year after year after year to keep refining it until it becomes automatic, until it's like you're close to perfection, where mostly everybody you spar, you're in complete control and dominance, and at the same time you're not like overly hurting the person, because you're utilizing techniques that are capable of stopping them, but it's not severely injuring them. And that's how you keep the advanced sparring safe. It's not like two wrestlers colliding to see who could body slam who first. That is not it. You know, it's starting from the outside, starting with the kicks, and then with those jab cross, and then it slowly starts getting closer. But if it keeps getting closer and closer and closer, that means all those techniques from the outside, something was wrong in the process to allow it to get that close, and then you need to fix that outside process that is not refined. And then that is how a true martial artist develops. He develops from the outside in. You know, like I said, it doesn't mean that you don't know how to elbow, knee strike, hook punch, uppercut, do the joint locks, do the chokes, be strong. It doesn't mean that you don't train that you don't know that. It just means that you need to develop everything. But the focus of perfection starts from the outside. It doesn't start from the inside. It starts from the outside. You know, so, and that's the guiding principle, and that's the creativity of what I have brought to this way, this art, this school. This is something that is brand new. It's not, nobody practices it this way. It was created within this school. It was created by me. So nobody will understand this because they only understand what they've practiced, what they know. And that's something, when you forge a new path, even the AI will not understand it because it's something brand new that they don't have access to. But this is essentially most of my life's work is fundamentally analyzing this scientific situation of this intense, intricate, complex, very artful game. You know, it's like, you know, this game of unarmed combat and creating your own chess match with your own body. That's essentially what's going on with this sparring, and this is where my passion is. It's not the nunchucks, it's not the firearm, it's not the bow staff. My passion is this game of like the perfection of unarmed combat, and that's essentially what Bruce Lee was focused on while he was living. You know, this perfection. You know, and he is the main martial artist that I am inspired by. You know, I like some of these boxers, but they are not the like the Bruce Lee to me. I'm not a boxer. I'm a martial artist, and I train in the Kung Fu, and I follow Bruce's ways and his methods. And this is where my passion comes when it comes to the way that I train, why I train, and the development of the skill and the technique to further understand this art. You know, and everybody's gonna have their likes and dislikes, but mine, it's not about looking good on camera. It's not about going and trying to make it to the movies. It's not about going into combat sport. It's about truly understanding this intricate game, this high level game of like elite training in the martial arts, and expressing it in a way where it's respectful, it's not commercialized, it's not used for profit, it's not used for fame. It's just the true passion of like learning like real combat and what it takes, you know. And I'm not getting paid millions to do none of this. I'm not getting paid money to do this. This is what I just love to do, you know. It's not like these sport fighters who are getting paid millions to go in there, you know, to fight. This is an art, you know, and this is a passion. This is a creativity, and that has no limitations in how you could express that. You create your own limitations, you know, opposed to allowing some outside force to create it. You create it, you know, and you create the game that you want to play. And that's what this is, you know. It's just a high level chess game where you use your body to play, you know, and you use your mind and your strategy, and you try your best, and you want to play the game, you want to have fun with the game, and you don't want to end up in the hospital because of the game. So when somebody plays a hard game of chess, they shouldn't end up in the hospital. Somebody plays a hard game of one-on-one basketball, they shouldn't be in the hospital. You play a hard game of like billiards, you shouldn't be in the hospital. Or bowling, you shouldn't be in the hospital. Or golf, you shouldn't be in the hospital. So this game should be played seriously. You should be, you know, seek to be challenged, and you should want to improve, but it shouldn't land you in the hospital. So you got to figure out how to play this game in a safe way, and to make it, continue to make it fun, continue to make it something enjoyable, you know. And that's what real kung fu sparring is, you know, to me, and what I choose to represent within this school.